We begin with a federal judge doing something that is rocking the Trump DOJ, ordering DOJ to release even more Epstein files, including unredacted ones that could come within a week. In response to a filing alleging DOJ failed to comply with the Epstein law. We all remember how that went. There were delays, there were redactions, there were mistakes. This is new, though, and this involves the work of intrepid journalists, survivors, other critics who have stayed on the case. The judge ruling that because the underlying lawsuit made these valid claims and the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche on behalf of Trump didn't really engage, didn't respond substantively to those valid legal arguments, he effectively, and this is where strong arm in the courts can backfire on Trump, the judge found that they effectively, quote, conceded violation of the act. That's the Epstein law. So the DOJ has until the end of next week to release the records or go back to court. And this comes at a time where the ongoing pressure has coordinated. In other words, that lawsuit was going, the judge decided when to rule, but what you see today on your screen is another big day of blockbuster testimony happening on Capitol Hill. The scandal roaring back despite Trump's best efforts to get Republicans to stand down. Well, Trump has failed on that. Billionaire Leon Black went into a closed-doors interview, and if you want to get a sense of whether it mattered, whether he was facing uncomfortable, tough questions, well, he stormed out of there before it was over. So more on that tonight, and our guests will break it down. But just to remind you, Black was such a key figure in Epstein's orbit because while other people came and went, some said they had no idea what was going on or they never exchanged money, Black was a much bigger deal. The Times reporting Epstein's friendship with Black was basically, quote, the most important relationship he had with someone in that rich and powerful circle. There were other rich and powerful people. Some of them had sporadic contact or a group dinner here or there that many of those people have now said they regret. But this was, according to the Times, the most important. Black kept Epstein afloat financially, even after the 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution from a minor. And all of that is context for how today, all these years later, because of all the things we've all lived through as a country, the pressure on Trump, the way this became a bipartisan issue, the way that even after the documents, the files came out, members of Congress kept pushing, and I should mention, including some Republicans who crossed Trump on this because they said it mattered. All of that leading up until this day with the pressure on Black to do something that he dodged largely, which was appearing in this kind of high-stakes testimony. And he didn't want to answer these questions. He didn't want to get into alleged hush money payments. He didn't really have great answers, as I'll show you, about why he paid so many millions, over $160 million, to Epstein. And there was a general sense that he was dodging.
We have had many of these depositions and interviews, and this is the first time as someone actually walked out in the middle of it. This is also the first time I heard someone gush poetically about how smart and how great Jeffrey Epstein was.
It's also clear that Mr. Black knew of Epstein's past conviction and plea deal and also was unbothered by it.
Leon Black was arrogant, he was smug, he refused to answer the questions.
That's the view of several of the Democratic lawmakers. Now, to give you the accurate full picture, Black and his lawyers arranged for him to come in voluntarily. Now, that would be a good thing if he voluntarily participated throughout. But it looks a lot more like a kind of a bait and switch because he came in voluntarily but then wouldn't answer questions, including foreseeable questions. There is documentation about him sending money to women related to the Epstein case. There is reporting that there may be NDAs. The thing about reporting on NDAs, though, is if you don't actually get a hold of them and both parties have legal agreements and sanctions and hanging over them to not admit them, it can be hard to get to the bottom of that. But these were not kind of oddball, unfair, random questions. These are the kind of things that you would expect a participating witness to prepare for, refresh their memory, talk to their lawyers, and answer. Instead, Black was, according to many, and the Republicans and Democrats appear to agree on this point, dodging things and not willing to get into those NDAs, the non-disclosure hush money agreements at all. And so that led to this very unusual development where basically during the interview he got a legal subpoena. That's them kind of calling his move and saying, yeah, you said you'd come in voluntarily, but we have methods to make you talk. We are Congress. People go to jail sometimes for violating subpoenas. You probably remember the Navarro and other cases. So they gave him that, telling this billionaire they're going to be tough. The top Democrat, Robert Garcia, discussing that.
We actually commend Chairman Comer's decision here. It's what Democrats have been asking for. These subpoenas will ensure that we get the NDAs, but also ensure that we actually get Leon Black in front of our committee under subpoena and under oath, so that he actually has to answer these questions. These interviews should all be under oath.
2 quick points there. On substance, using actual pressure with teeth to get more information about this. That's the substance of subpoenaing someone even who tried to, with his fancy lawyers and big plans, tried to use a voluntary appearance to maybe just get by this. So that's substantively what's happening, pressure. On the politics, and Congress is full of politics, what you just heard was a Democrat, quote, commending a Republican on that committee for using those tactics, which is a reminder that for all of the partisan rancor and all the failures that we've seen, this issue does seem to go differently. Mr. Garcia, who I just showed you there, has been on this program. He's talked about how they want to work whichever way they can, including with Republicans who are willing to go forward on an investigative basis. Now, that doesn't include Trump or Blanche, Republicans who have been fighting this tooth and nail. But if it includes Chairman Comer today, well, you're seeing that bipartisanship, at least on this subpoena issue. Now, we did hear from Black, and as always, I want to tell you what he's saying. I showed you the criticism of him, I showed you the pressure, but this is also a time for learning. And just like any court case, you want to learn both sides to make up your own mind. But if you think of Black here as the kind of civil witness in this process, here's what he was saying. He claims he was duped by Epstein, that over $60 million was actually basically tricked out of him, even though he is supposed to be a pretty sophisticated banker, that financial advisory fees, he were told, were tax deductible, so he thought they would actually cost him a lot less. Now, let me pause right there. That's his defense of forking up tens of millions of dollars for these tax services. But it's not really conceivable that someone at the top of the financial industry, a billionaire with hordes of lawyers, lawyers at his capital firm, personal lawyers, civil lawyers, been around the block a couple decades, done big deals, that he wrongly thought that business services would be tax deductible, like some kind of charitable donation. Any lawyer, anyone in finance knows all about that and wouldn't really fall for that. So I'll tell you what he said, but I'll also tell you the strength and the credibility of that particular defense. Now, he's also denied any wrongdoing or knowledge of Epstein's criminal conduct. And we should note he has not been pursued criminally thus far. Black's ties to Epstein, though, are deep. The phrase, quote, please call Leon Black, appears over 300 times in the Epstein files. So either you believe these two men were constantly discussing tax policy, or there were calls about other things. Then there's that money I mentioned already that Black said he thought it was less, but the actual total charge was about $170 million across 6 years. So either you believe that that was all for tax services, and you could have a pretty big tax bill and still not want to pay $170 million to avoid it. You might just put that money towards the bill. But either you believe that, or, as these investigators have said, there's more to the story. Because the Times reporting suggests that Epstein was doing other non-tax services for Black, including being a type of fixer. What that actually means and entails is still under investigation. The Times also reporting that Epstein did do that financial work, that despite his financial dependency, Epstein believed he still had power in the relationship. The pressure campaign appeared to work. Black, one of the richest Wall Street figures, continued to fork over tens of millions of dollars. So reading between the lines there, the Times is suggesting that perhaps, it's not proven, but perhaps there were reasons that that money was changing hands beyond the just claimed tax services. Now, again, I told you we're going to tell you both sides of this right before we bring in our guests. One of Black's lawyers tells the Times that the payments to Epstein were all tax and estate planning services. And, just to get this on record, they added to imply that Epstein somehow had influence over Mr. Black is false and patently absurd. That's reporting from the Times, and we are joined by Deputy Investigations Editor from the New York Times, David Enrich, who has covered Black and Epstein's relationship extensively, as well as many other facets of this. And another reporter who's worked on this story quite a bit, Tara Palmieri, veteran journalist, author of The Red Letter on Substack, and host of the Tara Palmieri podcast. Welcome to both of you. David, you and your colleagues' reporting is paramount here. I mentioned that we do want to reflect the denials. There was also a clear clash over the scope of testimony today. Given that you've been so deep in this, one, where does Black fit into the Epstein circle? Just big picture to remind people. And then two, what stood out to you or what did you learn today?
Well, and the Black relationship is arguably one of the very most important relationships that Epstein had. And Black was the single biggest financial contributor to Epstein probably ever, but certainly in the years after he was convicted of a sex crime and had to register as a sex offender. So he played an absolutely indispensable role in keeping Epstein afloat, allowing him to continue to abuse women, young women, and also maintain this very extravagant lifestyle. And the thing that surprised me about today's hearing is that, and it was very odd to me that Black was willing to go in there voluntarily in the first place. He's been extremely tight-lipped and uncooperative with requests to better understand the nature and extent of his relationship with Epstein. And the notion that he was going to go in there and just voluntarily, happily answer everything for lawmakers really surprised me. And it turned out that was not at all what he intended to do. And now I guess he's going to have to do that under threat of, contempt of Congress.